Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Carl Pauls. I'm here with Gabe Ignetti, Chris Bergen, and our special guest, Bjorn Peters. This is the Ecomodernist channel live. Bjorn is a physicist, energy economist, and entrepreneur. He heads the private research and consultancy firm Peters Call, specializing in commodity, energy, and storage financing and development. In the 20-plus years of his career, he held various positions in management consulting, in leading financial institutions. He held responsibilities for commodity and energy markets and top management positions. Between 2019 and 2024, he helped build the nuclear startup Dual Fluid Energy. He is now the president of a free market economy think tank. Welcome to the program, Bjorn.
Thanks for having me. Hi.
It's always very informative. Wonderful.
Great.
And of course, the reason for nuclear is that we have a energy crisis in Europe with trying to depend on gas, and the short supply of gas from east of Europe is a big problem right now. But tell us more. What is the extent of the European energy crisis? Just how bad is it?
Well, Germany is probably the worst. So we have ruined our energy policy since a number of years. And with our current government, they are unilaterally looking for weather-dependent sources of energies. So they want to build out solar PV and wind energy, although we are a relatively weak country or area for wind and solar irradiation. So we're high up in the north, lots of clouds. Sometimes, in particular in winter weather, is very often dark, so cloudy and wind still. So we have some winters with weeks of dark doldrums. So it's really an economic challenge to make it work. I believe that theoretically, from a technical point of view, you could bring this up to operations somehow, but it comes at a price tag a couple of times the energy price of neighboring countries, or the US or so France, Sweden have much lower energy cost, and we are thus losing our industry. And so Germany is really screwed. We used to be the economic powerhouse, and we came extremely well through the financial crisis, for example, of 2008, 2009, because we had a very strong industrial basis. But we are losing it as we speak. Companies are closing for good or closing their German operations and moving to other countries, mostly US, but France is a good address. So everywhere where energy costs is very relevant and a high fraction of your total cost within an industrial production process, the incentive is very high to leave Germany and to dig roots somewhere else.
So because of that high incentive to leave Germany with, all the industrial processes, all the manufacturing, I remarked once from other perspectives of people who visit Germany that a great deal of the local cutlery and all the household goods, those have been historically locally produced. And it's amazing, compared to America, everything's produced in China. And so with the flight of manufacturing, are you losing this part of your home-built culture?
Yes, definitely. So the business model of Germany as an economy used to be we were extremely strong and really world leading in three fields. And that was car making. So we invented the car. For those ones who don't believe that, we have cars in Germany. So 130 years ago or 40 years ago, we were extremely strong in chemistry. We used to be, until the 1970s, the pharmacy of the world. So all major inventions were made, and the German chemical academic sector was by far the strongest until the war. And we were a little bit laggards in nuclear construction, but we catched up. and we became the world leading manufacturers of nuclear power stations. So nuclear chemistry cars, with the emergence of the Greens in the 1980s, we started to lose the nuclear industry. It's gone. It's not there any longer. And the chemical industry, only a very, very small parts still reside in Germany. In particular, the headquarters are mostly somewhere else, and BASF is still one of the really world leaders in chemistry, but their German process manufacturers, manufacturing sites, they lose money, whereas everywhere else, they make money. And Ludwigshafen is the biggest chemical factory in the world still. So they really know what they're doing, but they try to reduce there. And now with very silly EU regulation on car emissions that are enforced far too fast than technically possible, we're losing now our advantage in the car making sector and in the automotive sector. And with it, we used to be this combination of base materials, because energy used to be low cost until 20 years ago, 25 years ago, high manufacturing skills, very performant academic sectors. We had a very strong Mittelstand. So there's about 700 industrial markets, and we were in usually all of them. We had a number one, a number two, or a number three, and sometimes combined all of them. So we had relatively small companies with maybe 200 or 2,000 employees that were world leaders in their segment. And we're losing all of this because of mainly three reasons. Energy is very dominant. Bureaucracy is very difficult, very costly in Germany. And third, it's because of our high tax area, we don't get the people we need, the skilled labor. So it's three things. It's really three causes, and we're losing out.
Yeah. Well, we got some questions in our commentators stacking up. So Gabe, why don't you go ahead?
I heard that about Germany before, about them, especially with solar, but how much of an effect is that compared to, let's say, a country that has abundant wind and solar? I mean, in other words, is wind and solar competitive under certain conditions or not?
Well, the business case for wind and solar is quite different, as you might know. So wind energy is always sold on a wholesale market. And so it has to be competitive on a wholesale market. Some areas of the world, you get down to 2, 3, 4 cents per kilowatt hour. It looks competitive, but of course, it's only cheap when there's wind. And so it depends really very much on the temporal properties of the weather, whether you have essentially daily wind, like in some coastal areas of Oman, of Kenya, that's can be quite good, but not so much in Central Europe, where we are located. We have typically, it takes 18 hours to build up a wind field and 18 hours to get down to a doldrum. And in between, you have 2 or 3 days with total wind stillness, so doldrum, or a very, very well blowing wind. It's very rare that you have wind in between. You get wind when the weather changes. And that makes it really very difficult to integrate it into a grid. And the more you have of it, the more costly the grid integration is. Now, solar is a different thing. Of course, there are some solar parks that feed into the high voltage grid, but most of them are small, so villas where people have maybe 10 kilowatt or so of solar, increasingly together with some storage. And then it's quite competitive because you compete against the retail price of power, and which is of course much higher because of the grid integration cost of wind, and because somebody has to pay for it. So you end up, so it used to be 5, 6, 7, 8 cents the retail price. Nowadays it is, in Germany it's 40 cents, And so in all economies where you have lots of wind and solar energy, the retail price goes up because of the integration cost. So this is a very complex situation that most politicians unfortunately don't understand.
And historically, nuclear energy was one of those wedge topics, as we say in America. It is something which the Greens latched onto and tried to get allegiance from the other parties using. And how is that shaped up for the Greens? Has that won them many votes lately?
No. But when you say historically, initially, so in the 1960s and 70s, nuclear energy was a leftist project because it was enabling the working class to get to wealth and to good lifestyle. So it was initially a leftist project, only that the left parties have totally forgotten about. The Greens were founded in 1979, I believe, or 1980. I was too young to really remember. And they campaigned on anti-chemistry and anti-nuclear industry. And they became enormously powerful. So they have now a majority of the journalists that are essentially green, sometimes even party members. And this was very, very strong until a few years ago, but it is backfiring now.
Mm-hmm.
Because people are really fed up increasingly with the published opinion, which is always green, and they know that they can't trust the big programs any longer. And it's both in TV and so that the market shares of TV programs and radio programs have decreased enormously, and alternative media have come up. It's a little bit like Tucker Carlson also being the most successful channel. Actually, I've read somewhere, I don't know if it's true, in the US nowadays, when it used to be maybe CNN or CBS or Fox News or something like this. So it's a similar thing in all over Europe.
Yeah, and I specialize a little bit in the history of the Greenpeace and the Greens. It
Mm.
was, you were exactly right, 1979, 1980, as a response to atmospheric weapons testing of the Americans and the British. And in Europe,
And
this
the
was,
French. And the
oh,
French,
and the
they did.
French. How could I forget? And this was so successful. This campaign of anti-nuclear war was so successful financially in Europe that the American Greenpeace sold the name and sold the structure to the successfully funded European branch of the Greenpeace, and the rest, as we now know, is history.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah. So the polls have shown that people in Germany, uh, on average, support nuclear power, but it seems the government has consistently moved in the opposite direction. Is this some hidden influence? Is it fossil fuel funded? Is it a result of journalists getting in? What is it that's causing all of this shift in policy?
Actually, I believe it was Michael Schellenberger in his book Apocalypse Never who pointed out that in California it actually was gas interest who paid for the anti-nuclear movement and had quite convincing arguments there, if I remember right. In Germany, it is a little bit a particular situation because it was actually we were divided into two countries, a communist and a capitalist one. Our industry was so strong, so they wouldn't be able to catch up, but they still had the goal of taking over. And how do you take over somebody who is miles ahead of you? You sabotage him. And it is very well known that many of the founders of the Green Party were actually communists, well trained by the Secret Service of the communist Germany, and they learned everything that was necessary to do efficient sabotage. It's the fear mongering, and a good game with the media and so on. So this is a very particular situation, but it's rather well documented. Both the Nazi people and the communist people had a big share of the initial votes in the Green Party when it was founded.
This is wild, but it reminds me of the idea of the fear of radiation, the fear of nuclear technology itself is based on the fear of corrupting the human germline, the human pure, perfect human DNA. So it is not off the mark to expect members of the Nazi party to be involved in that fear-mongering.
We're talking about how the government can sometimes say, these are what you need to produce. In the U.S., we've done something similar, but we do it through subsidies a lot of times. We want this outcome, so we will give you a large subsidy, a direct subsidy, or a back-end subsidy off of tax deferments. And I know Germany has done a little bit of that with their solar production, with putting up solar panels on housetops and so forth. But how much of what industry there is left do you think has been influenced through this indirect subsidies or other indirect means?
Indeed, everything that's energy has been enormously state planned in the last 25 years. And even worse, it has never been a proper planning. So if you really do a plan, you set up a project plan with a risk matrix. And so you think you want to reach a certain goal and and here are the ways how to reach it. And of course, this has never happened. And it's the reason why it's particularly the energy sector is extremely chaotic, with issues that I'm writing about since 10 years or so, but nobody wants to listen. And politicians typically have never run a project. So that's not their field of experience. So they don't know what a project actually is. And when a plan turns into a project, that's exactly when you talk about the resources, the time it takes to reach a goal, and a little bit like an architect designing something. Our energy policy has always been on a nice sketch on a paper, and you hold it into the camera and say, this is great, let's go this way. To make it really a project, you need two steps. And one is to have precise sketches. So with on the millimeter, so what is it exactly what you want to have? And then the third step is that you need the construction engineers who do all the fine planning, how much robustness do you need to make it a solid structure. And then the fourth step is that you actually build it. And these latter three steps have never been done in the German energy policy. But your question was a little bit about which sectors were mostly touched by over-bureaucracy, and lots of the German Mittelstand is still rather successful, even until today, particularly in cases when they don't need too much energy, so that the comparative energy cost position is not too cumbersome for them. And Germany has always been a high-cost competitor as compared to India or China or even the US sometimes. But people were paying the higher price for German machinery because it was considered robust. And most importantly, when there was an issue, you could call somebody even after 20 years, and a technician would come and fix the issue, fix the problem. And that is probably what made the German economy strong. And there is still a strong basis. So with a renaissance of, let's say, initial Western values, we still could turn around even the German economy. It's my belief. That's why I've taken over the responsibility in this liberal market think tank.
Mm-hmm. A follow-up question, I guess. Do you feel that younger people, let's say under 40 years of age, that they haven't seen a free market system really? They've seen something which is influenced by subsidies, some things that are influenced by direct government interference. Do you feel like they have a good understanding of how to put together a modern society without these very strange and elastic secondary means of forcing things to work?
Actually, I think there's a division of people older or younger than 25. Older than 25 to up to 40, like you mentioned, they are, I think, it's more or less a ruined generation, with, of course, some exceptions. But what I see with the younger generation, they know that the boomers have ruined their future, and if they want to have one, they have to dig in. I mean, they have to really work very hard, and they are creative. They go abroad. They the young people, and most importantly, can measure it. We had this year we had European elections, and 5 years, so they all every 5 years. And 5 years ago, the strongest party among those voters who voted the first time were actually the Greens and the Liberals. The Liberals, by the way, over here, they are those one with the market economy. And this time, the strongest party among the first voters were far right party. So they understood that they have really to change fundamentally something. And I never was a big fan of the far right party, but we need to get down the state ratio of in the economy. So the ratio of the dollars that are spent by the state or in the framework of some governmental schemes down from something like 50 to 60% to ideally something like 10 to 15%. Because if you go back in history, the most successful times in history in the economy were, and that's the 1870 to 1914, and that's 1950 or 1948, to be very precise, up to about 1969. We had this ratio of government spending in the entire economy was about 10 to 15%, and that's where we have to go back to. And the young people are much more open to, the very young people are much more open to such arguments.
Do the young people understand history? Do they understand a history where they can lean on past lessons learned rather than learn them for the first time right now?
I doubt it.
Yeah, I can go off of that. It is that in our current era, the search engine, the Reddit post, the machine learning is the destruction of the logical mind and precise thinking. It is you're asking the community, without understanding how to get there for an answer and not knowing where the sources are. And so my question now to sort of round out our conversation is, would a return to more precise thinking and the more hardworking youth of the current era, are they going to help us reverse Germany's anti-nuclear policy? Is there something else that we can look forward to roll back this disastrous deindustrialization of Germany?
But why are we so vulnerable that we give away all our achievements like for free, like this, just like this? And I think we need to be much more aware of those achievements in order to appreciate it and to create a new renaissance of the Western thinking. People are really looking for solutions and for answers to the question why we are so destructive in our society. And so anti-nuclearism is just one aspect of it, but I believe it is a symptom, and we need to go to the root causes and find solutions to remedies, even healing of bad things that are happening in our society. And it's all about learning about our past and what was good and maybe what was not so good, but to make a learned judgment of what we want to take into the 21st century of the good things our ancestors have created. And nuclear energy, I mean, it's such a no-brainer that if you have a cheap, non-emitting source of energy, that's reliable and that you can deploy essentially everywhere, that you have to build it. But the reasons why people fight against it is they are so anachronistic if you carefully think about it. And in Germany, I think we have done a good job when we started the pro-nuclear activism 6 years ago. There was a relative majority for nuclear energy already then, and I'm measuring this since about now 3-4 years, and we've gone up to 65 to 70% pro-nuclear in the German population. I mean, I think we did a great job there. So it was about the information about all the aspects of nuclear energy, the contacts to journalists, that they understood they had to write something more fact-based about nuclear energy and all of this. And then now, of course, the question is, can we save the dismantled power plants? And that is a more tricky question, actually. But essentially, you can bring back every engine. It's just a matter of cost. And with a number of people, we want to write a report about this. And I'm happy to come back and present the results once we have it. But we need to assess all about 17 sites of where there are still remnants of nuclear power stations. And some of them you could switch on like this because nothing has demolished so far. And others, of course, it's essentially a new build. But we will find out, and happy to present it.
Wonderful. So thank you so much for your contributions. Is there anything, I know we don't want to keep you, it's a nice evening, we might have spoiled your sunset already, but if you wanted to highlight anything that you're working on, please let us know.
I think I brought across the important point that I'm working on now.
Great.
And yeah. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. This has been the Ecomodernist Channel Live. You can find us most every Sunday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. And remember, emissions first, peace and justice will follow.
Please subscribe to us on YouTube, Ecomodernist Channel. Also to subscribe to us on Twitter and Facebook, Ecomodernist Society of North America.
And online at https://esna.earth.